This week, I added more Hedera to my portfolio. And yes, sure, 3 weeks ago, $5.25 million got stolen from an app built on this network, and half of crypto Twitter called it dead. But I didn't sell, I bought more HBAR. Let me show you why. This is not financial advice, always do your own research. First, let's deal with the bad news, because I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. On July 11th, Bonzo Finance, a lending app that runs on top of Hedera, not the network itself, got hit with an Oracle manipulation exploit. $9 million moved out. Bonzo's team confirmed they are investigating and working with partners. But this isn't the first time the market has overreacted to bad news attached to a project's name. Go back to November 2022. FTX collapsed. And because Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX was one of Solana's biggest backers, Sol got dragged down with it. From over $250 to around $8, guys. People said Solana was finished. About a year and a half later, it was already trading over $200 again. I'm not saying Bonzo is FTX, not even close in scale. What I'm saying is that when an app gets hacked, then people often assume the whole network is broken, compromised, even when it isn't. And that's where opportunities can appear. Now here's what actually matters. 6 days after that exploit, on July 16th it was, Hedera announced a new partnership with Utila, bringing institutional-grade custody and wallet infrastructure into the ecosystem. Better custody infrastructure lowers one of the biggest barriers for institutional adoption. That's why the Utila partnership matters. And at the beginning of July, Robinhood's tokenized stock launch put tokenization back in the spotlight. We all know that by now. That is important because Hedera isn't starting from scratch. Through projects like Swarm, it already has a platform bringing regulated stocks, bonds, and commodities on-chain. Zoom out further, and the governing council now sits at over 30 members, including Google, Deutsche Telekom, FedEx, IBM, McLaren, Standard Bank. All of these are not companies that join a dead project. Let me tell you that. And on the builder side, we have something interesting there too. Hedera's smart contract layer is now fully EVM compatible, meaning developers can port existing Ethereum apps over with minimal, and I mean minimal rewrites. That makes it easier to new applications to launch on the network. But here's the thing. In crypto, fundamentals alone do not decide when a token moves. The overall market cycle does. When Bitcoin enters a new bull market, liquidity starts flowing back into crypto. And when that happens, projects with strong narratives, real adoption, and good positioning are usually the ones that attract the most, predominantly the most attention. I want you to get me right, guys. I'm not buying Hedera because I think one partnership will suddenly send HBAR higher. But I'm buying because if the next cycle arrives, I want to hold assets that actually have a reason to exist. It's true that a rising tide lifts the entire market, but when investors start looking for quality, the projects with strong fundamentals deep within usually separate themselves from the rest. And speaking of that rising tide, the timing of that next cycle is becoming interesting too. To have a somewhat better understanding of what's going on, of course, we need to look at Bitcoin, which has been in this bear market for around 43 weeks already since reaching its all-time high. Historically, major Bitcoin bottoms have usually formed closer to the 52-week mark after the cycle top. That doesn't mean history has to repeat, but it does put us in the window where a potential bottom could start forming now. Another interesting comparison is the 2022 bear market. Before Bitcoin bottomed around, what was it then, $16,000, the weekly RSI formed a bullish divergence. Price was making lower lows, while momentum was starting to recover. And today, we are seeing a similar setup. Bitcoin has already formed a weekly RSI divergence, even though we are still roughly some 10 weeks away from that 52-week time frame. That doesn't guarantee the bottom is in, but historically, these are the types of signals that appear when sellers are becoming exhausted. Now, this is where Hedera's chart becomes interesting. HBAR is currently sitting on a multi-year support zone around an ascending trend line. Every previous time that price has reached this area, buyers have stepped in and created significant rebounds. On top of that, HBAR has also formed a bullish divergence on the weekly RSI. The last time Hedera created a similar weekly RSI divergence, guess what? The price exploded over 800% in just 4 weeks. Of course, past performance does not guarantee another move like that. And yet, crypto has a habit of moving extremely fast when the market cycle, technical setup, and the narrative all align. However, there's also another factor that many investors overlook, which is the supply pressure. According to Hedera's treasury data, roughly 95% of the total HBAR supply has already been released according to its official schedule. That means most of the major dilution from new tokens entering circulation is already behind us. For investors looking at the next cycle, that matters because a project with improving adoption and limited future supply pressure has a better setup than one which is still facing years of heavy unlocks. We have to agree on that. So then, where could Hedera realistically go if the next bull market arrives? I'm looking at previous cycles and realistic market conditions actually. The return to the previous all-time high would put HBAR around 57 cents, which would already represent a significant move from the current levels. A more aggressive scenario where crypto enters a full mania phase and Hedera becomes one of the major enterprise blockchain narratives could take it beyond that. But the important part is having a plan. For me, I would not be holding forever, waiting for a perfect top. I would rather be taking profits as the price moves into major resistance zones and letting the market prove whether the next leg higher is sustainable. The first resistance zone is this trendline market from the all-time high. That would give us a target of around 29 cents. And actually, when Hedera breaks out, it moves quickly, as we can see from previous examples. In 2021, in January, it gave us over 1500% move in 10 weeks. Then in November 2024, it did over 800% in 4 weeks. So this time, once Hedera starts its move, I will want my first take profit at around 29 cents, as I said, to be hit in no longer than 3 months. The thing that matters is when we need aggressive buying. And honestly, we don't have that yet, guys. If price breaks out from this important trend line, I will expect Hedera to make a new all-time high. And the target for a new all-time high is the 1.618 Fibonacci, which comes at around 90 cents. This would take more time to happen, naturally. In fact, this move can last a whole year or more. So that's why it's important to not wait for a perfect specific top, but to start taking profits gradually and not just take screenshots. So that's why I added more Hedera. Not because the Bonzo exploit didn't matter. It did, of course. Also not because Hedera is guaranteed to succeed. Nothing in crypto is guaranteed. But I thought because I think people are overlooking what's happening behind the scenes with Hedera. The bigger picture is showing improving fundamentals, a potentially changing macro cycle, and a technical setup that historically has led to strong moves up. I'm on board, but now the market has to decide if Hedera deserves that same attention as mine. Now, this is where I'm asking you for your thoughts in the comments too, on Hedera, on this new video format, whether you're interested in this kind of content or not. See, I thought I would make this video to share my reason about what I'm changing in my portfolio and how Hedera is part of that specifically, so that you can have an alternative viewpoint about what's going on in the market right now. So, if you enjoyed this one, then please let me know in the comments, and also give the video a like, subscribe to the airdrops.com channel, and keep coming back here because I plan on bringing you more of these kind of breakdowns of the market. So, with that being said, I'm Stan, and I thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Ciao.